Welcome, I'm Rob, and in this unit, we will discuss what are AI agents. Because let's be realistic, these days it seems they're everywhere. Everyone is talking about AI agents. At the same time, it also seems that everyone understands something quite different of what an AI agent is supposed to mean. So, in this video, we'll try to demystify it and have a clear mental picture of what are AI agents. So, let's get started. The most simple idea that we have from working in generative AI with LLMs is the prompt. And if we think, for example, about a classic prompt that will be asking for the capital of a country, for example, what's the capital of Italy, we send this prompt to an LLM and we'll get an answer. And this answer will be factual, regardless of which prompt and provider we're actually using. However, what happens if suddenly, instead of asking the capital of a city, we go and ask, what's my dog's name? Well, it is quite unlikely that the LLM will know what's our dog's name. And what will happen will be that either the answer will be generic or will be wrong. This is not what we want, right? And therefore, it's a question, what are our options? What can we do about that? Is it even solvable? Because if it's not in the LLM, then there might not be a way to retrieve this information. And some of you might be saying, well, what if, for example, we do some fine tuning with our personal information and we include there our dog's name? Or someone else might be proposing, what if we do a RAG architecture where we can include the dog's name as part of the information in this knowledge base? But there is another way how we could solve this problem. And this idea is the following. What if, when the request comes for what's my dog's name, and the LLM doesn't have an answer for that, it's able to call a service that can get access the APIs, internal or external, and in one of those APIs or functions, the information about the dog's name is available. And that's pretty much the idea of working with agents, where we request from a service that provides us access, the tools, functions, services that otherwise would require implementing this function calling. We require that we write some sort of like API wrapper, that we write some service and so on that gets information. And with this, we can retrieve external information just through prompts. Therefore, when we ask for what's my dog's name, the answer that we receive becomes factual, becomes real. That sounds fantastic, right? But you might be saying, hey, that's actually quite trivial. It's very, very simple. Perhaps it won't work for something more complex. Or you might be also saying, hey, what else can we be doing? Is there something more complex? Well, let's look at another example of how this can work. Here we have a classic case, travel booking. We have a traveler, and this person is at a booking website. The person will likely want to book a flight, and imagine that if instead of having the person type all their details manually, name, passport number, frequent flyer number, and so on and so forth, the agent can carry out the booking on behalf of this traveler. Or the other way around. What if, whenever the traveler requests some information, for example, where's my luggage? How do I get to the airport? How can I book a cab at my destination? And so on and so forth. Instead of having a human support, instead of having customer care, the traveler website, the booking website, is providing this through agentic workflows. And this starts to sound a bit familiar, right? This feels like process automation. This feels like some way of automating steps. And you are saying, hey, we have seen this many times before. There are so many tools out there that enable us either to have processes simplified, automated, or where we can have chatbots and so on. So what are agents doing any different? It feels like we've seen this movie before. Well, if we look a bit deeper, one major difference between previous efforts around automation, around having some sort of interactive chatbots and so on, and what we're seeing now with AI agents is the possibility of stacking agents, of creating roles for them. And we see this in this example here. Something that is very classic, bread and butter at a corporate finance department. We have a person requiring a PowerPoint presentation containing the financial performance of the company. And this is something that someone, an analyst, will have to carry out and spend quite some time preparing it. But we can think about an agentic service, an agentic workflow that can carry this out. However, it will not do it just as a single unit, but you will have multiple units with different responsibilities. You have one, for example, that specializes in presentations, that is an expert for generation of PowerPoints. Another agent will be the one carrying out everything related to financial reporting. Then there will be one that will be just for understanding how the company in question requires the data prepared, if you should follow some guidelines. And you can also think about many other possibilities. For example, that there's an agent only specialized in making sure that this report follows the guidelines for styling, for how the voice of the company should be represented, and so on and so forth. And all of them work together as a team of sorts in order to deliver the financial report as a PowerPoint presentation. And this is something that, with everything else that we had before, regardless if it is process automation or any other type of automation, we were not able really to have this hierarchy and delegation of tasks and roles, all of them coordinated to achieve a common goal. And you are thinking here, hey, if we have this available, then what is it that we can do with agents? Are there any limits for agents? Can they do everything? Or are there certain things that we cannot yet achieve with them? Well, if we think about characteristics of agents, we can really think about four of them. We see that they can have some level of autonomy to carry the tasks. They should be able to learn and adapt because, as we know, when we interact with any type of APIs or services, not always work or the work a bit different than we would expect. And given that it's interacting with these services, it also needs a way to understand the responses from them. And none of this will have really a meaning if the agent isn't goal driven, if there is not a final task or objective that the agent should be pursuing. And you might be thinking now, what else can we do with agents? And not only that, which technologies are usually used for agentic workflows? Well, if we think about the infrastructure for them, this is classic cloud deployment, Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Computing, and so on. You can also think about the models that run there, such as Mistral, OpenAI, Google Gemini. But also, once you have the agents in place, you need some platforms and frameworks that control and keep track of different steps that the agents are executing. In this series, we will be looking in depth at one of them, LangGraph. Once you have all this, you think about what is it that we can achieve. And there are myriads of things, from customer support tickets, the data analysis, or any type of process automation. All of that can be done with agents. And curiously, you're now thinking, hey, this does resemble somehow how we will build classic web applications. And you're right, because in fact, agents are nothing else than applications, software applications, web applications with additional automation. And we can pretty much model every SaaS software on the market as an agentic workflow. So this just opens a world of possibilities of all the type of things that we can do with AI agents. And it's not only us that think about this. We're looking here at a recent slide from Salesforce, the CRM provider. They are also heavily invested in agentic workflows. They have what's called Agentforce. And how Salesforce see it is not from the perspective of any type of SaaS generation or automation, but rather as complete roles where they say, instead of having maybe a sales representative carrying out manual tasks at your company, repetitive work, let us delegate this to our Salesforce agents, qualifying prospects, data cleaning, and so on. All that can be done from the Salesforce platform. And you are now thinking, well, I understood that. But how in the end this will work? And how is it that will be working in our further units? Well, to give you an overview, if we think about a process that is agentic driven, we have a query generated by the user. This query, as we know, tends to have a system prompt, like a role and so on. We will also have the user input and maybe some additional data from the system or from the user itself. We send this, the service, This service interacts with an LLM, and the LLM is calling different tools. Sometimes, maybe after the first response, the process ends. It is what we want. But very often, and most of the time, we have to update this value in the system and go through it again. So we have some sort of loops behind. We have pretty much a graph behind. And this opens many fascinating questions about how we can model these agentic workflows. And also, of course, what happens if, for example, these loops do not terminate, or if at some point those responses that we're getting are not the right ones. These and many other questions we'll be addressing in the further units. But to recap, agents are nothing more than process automation that can be hierarchical, can be stacked, and as a result, can enable us to pursue goals that can be formulated as prompts that fulfill the specific business goals. And this means that with this, we can build complete SaaS applications that are modeled from an agentic perspective. If this sounds exciting, let's go to the second section,